I never imagined that something like this could happen to me. I'm a 72-year-old woman, widowed for many years, and I live alone in a small house at the edge of town. My nights are usually quiet, predictable tea at 7, a bit of reading, and then bed. But that night was different. That night, the room went completely silent. And I don't mean just quiet, I mean the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the world itself had stopped breathing. There was no wind outside, no creaking from the old pipes, not even the hum of the refrigerator. Just silence, thick, airy, and still. I was sitting on my old armchair in the living room, reading a worn-out book I'd read many times before. I had my blanket over my lap and a soft lamp on beside me. But suddenly, everything felt strange. I looked up. My heart started to beat a little faster, though I didn't know why. I had the oddest feeling that I wasn't alone. You know that sense when someone is standing behind you, even if you can't see them? That's exactly what I felt. I put the book down and stood up slowly. My feet were cold against the wooden floor. I walked to the hallway, every step sounding louder than it should have. I reached the front door without really understanding why I was going there. Something was drawing me, pulling me gently forward. My hand trembled as I touched the doorknob. For a moment, I stood frozen, not sure if I should open it. But something inside me whispered, "Open the door," so I did. And when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. I saw nothing at first, just the quiet street outside and the dim porch light flickering. But then, I felt it. A presence, strong, still, watching. I couldn't see a person, but I knew something was there. Something waiting. My mouth went dry, and I stepped back, unsure if I was dreaming or losing my mind. But I wasn't. Something had changed. I closed the door slowly, locked it, and stood there with my back against it, trying to calm my racing heart. Then, as if on cue, the silence deepened even more. I felt a warmth behind me, even though the room was cold. That's when I realized this wasn't just a quiet night. This was the beginning of something holy. Something I would never be able to explain with words. But before I continue, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Which city, which country? I would love to know. And if you're listening to this, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because here, every story will lift your faith and bring peace to your heart, especially before sleep. What happened next changed my life forever. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, staring at the door, waiting for what, I wasn't sure. There was a strange feeling in my chest, something between fear and peace. It didn't make sense. How could I feel both at the same time? But I did. It was like something had entered my home, something invisible, but very real. Every now and then, I'd glance down the hallway, expecting to see someone standing there. But it was always empty. Still, I could feel the air was different, heavier, warmer, sacred. I finally lay down sometime after 3 in the morning, though I didn't expect to sleep. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and closed my eyes, just trying to breathe slowly. But even with my eyes closed, I felt watched, not in a threatening way, but in a way that made me feel small, like I was standing before something far greater than myself. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I woke up to a soft sound, like fabric moving gently. I opened my eyes, and the room was dim with early morning light. And then I saw him. A figure stood at the edge of my bedroom, tall and still, with a glow that wasn't from the sun. I couldn't see his face clearly, but his presence filled the room like thunder without sound. He wasn't a shadow and he wasn't a man. He was something else entirely. My body froze. I couldn't move. My lips parted but no words came out. It felt like time itself had stopped again. I wanted to speak, to ask, to scream, but all I could do was stare. The figure didn't move. He just stood there, calm and silent, his form surrounded by a soft light that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. His shape was strong, powerful, not delicate like the angels you see in paintings. There was nothing gentle about him, only strength, peace, and something I can only call holy. Finally, in a voice that seemed to come from inside me, not from the room, he said my name. Just my name. Nothing else. But it was enough to bring tears to my eyes. I felt my legs shake. My heart swelled with something I hadn't felt in years, recognition. As if someone had remembered me after I'd been forgotten for a very long time. I whispered back, yes, but he didn't answer, not with words. Instead, he took a single step forward. That one step filled the room with something invisible but heavy. I started to cry, not from fear but from a deep, deep knowing. Whoever or whatever he was, he hadn't come to hurt me. He had come for a reason. I just didn't know what it was yet. The moment he stepped closer, I could feel my breath catch in my throat. It wasn't fear anymore, it was awe. Every part of me was alert, aware, awake. I wanted to understand, but all I could do was sit there and watch him, this powerful being standing just a few feet away from me. His presence was so overwhelming that I couldn't speak. I didn't even think I could move. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full of something. Like the air itself had weight. He didn't say another word. He didn't need to. I could feel his message in my chest, like it was being written inside me without sound. My mind was racing with questions, but none of them made it past my lips. What was he? Why had he come? What did he want from someone like me? I was just an old woman. I had no great talents, no important role in this world. I was alone. Forgotten. But he looked at me like I mattered. Truly mattered. And I hadn't felt that in a long time. Without thinking, I whispered, "Why are you here?" His eyes never left mine. And then, with a voice so deep and calm that it seemed to echo through the walls, he finally spoke again. "Because you were heard," just 3 words. That was all. But those words went through me like a wave. I felt them touch every broken part of me. I had prayed so many times, in silence, in tears, on nights when no one saw. I prayed for strength, for peace, for meaning. And somewhere someone had heard. My throat tightened as tears filled my eyes. I didn't think anyone was listening, I whispered. He stepped even closer. The light around him didn't blind, it warmed. It wrapped around the room like a blanket, soft and comforting. "He always listens," the angel said. "Even when you feel forgotten, you are not alone." That was when something inside me cracked. Not in a painful way but in a freeing one. Like a heavy door finally swinging open after being shut for years. I began to cry, not from sadness but from release. I had carried so much grief, so much silence. And in this one moment, it was like it was being taken from me. Not erased but lifted. The angel raised one hand, not threatening, just gentle. As he did, a soft breeze moved through the room. My curtain swayed. The candle on my nightstand flickered. It felt like the entire house breathed with me. "There is more," he said. "Much more. But first, you must remember." "Remember what?" I asked. "What you've forgotten," he answered. And then he reached out his hand, not to take something from me, but to give. I didn't know what was about to happen. But I knew, deep in my bones, that my life was about to change forever. His hand was still extended toward me, steady and patient. I looked at it for a long moment, afraid to move. Afraid of what might happen if I did, and maybe even more afraid of what might not. But something inside me, something deeper than thought, told me to trust. Slowly, with trembling fingers, I reached out and touched his hand. The moment our skin met, I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. I don't mean I disappeared or that my body moved. I mean something in my mind, in my spirit, shifted. Suddenly I was somewhere else entirely. I was standing in a memory. My memory. I was 9 years old again, barefoot in the backyard of the house where I grew up. The sun was shining. I could feel the grass under my feet, the warmth on my skin. I could even smell the honeysuckle growing on the fence. I watched myself from a distance, playing with a doll my mother had sewn for me. And then, just like that, I remembered that day. It was the day after my father had left. My mother had told me he wasn't coming back, and I hadn't understood why. I had cried most of the night, confused and scared. And that morning, she gave me the doll and said, "You're not alone, sweetheart. Even when people leave, God stays." I hadn't thought about that moment in years, decades, really. But it came back now, so clear, so vivid. I looked beside me in the vision, and the angel was there, watching. "You asked if you were forgotten," he said softly. "But he's never forgotten a single day of your life. Not even this one." Tears ran down my cheeks. I didn't even try to stop them. I felt like a child again, open, raw, unguarded. The angel stepped forward and placed his hand gently on my shoulder. "You were heard even then," he said. "Even in your quietest pain." And then, just like that, the memory faded. I was back in my room. But I was different, lighter. Like something I didn't even know I had been carrying had been lifted. "Why show me this?" I asked quietly. He looked at me with eyes that seemed to see through time. "Because you believed you were invisible," he said. "But every moment of your life has been seen." I sat on the edge of my bed, overwhelmed, shaking, but strangely at peace. "Is this why you came?" I asked. To show me the past, the angel didn't nod or shake his head. He only said, the past is only the beginning. There's more. And you're ready. I didn't know what he meant by that. But deep down, I knew this was no ordinary visit. Something sacred was unfolding. Something I had waited a lifetime to understand. I didn't know what more meant. My heart was still racing, my thoughts tangled. But something deep in me stayed calm, like a still lake beneath the surface of a storm. I looked into the angel's face, trying to read what might come next, but his expression remained steady. Peaceful, unshaken. He didn't speak for a long moment. It was as if he was waiting for me to be ready. Finally, I whispered, "What do you mean I'm ready?" His voice was quiet, but it filled the space with weight. Ready to remember. Ready to see. Then, without moving his lips, he lifted his hand once more. A soft light flowed from his palm like mist made of gold. It wasn't harsh or blinding, it was warm, almost familiar. The light didn't shine on my body, it touched something deeper, my soul. Suddenly, I felt memories unlocking, not just of my childhood, but of dreams I had long forgotten. Dreams I used to have when I was much younger, dreams of a presence sitting at the edge of my bed, a whisper calling my name when no one else was around. I used to think I was imagining things. But now I wasn't so sure. "You've seen me before," I said without meaning to. The angel looked into my eyes and nodded once. "Many times. But only now can you see me fully." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "Why now?" "Because now," he said gently, "you no longer hide from yourself." His words hit something inside me like a bell. So much of my life had been spent looking away from my own heart, burying pain, ignoring hope, pretending I didn't long for something greater. But now all of that was crumbling. "Am I dying?" I asked suddenly, surprised by my own question. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer and sat at the edge of my bed, the way a parent would sit next to a child. "You are awakening," he said. "And sometimes awakening feels like dying. But it is not the end. It is the return." "Return to what?" I asked. He paused, as if choosing his words with care. "To who you've always been. To who you were before fear made you forget." I couldn't stop the tears from falling. My hands trembled. I had lived a long life, but I had spent so much of it afraid, disconnected, wondering if there was more. And now, here I was, face to face with proof that I was never alone. That I had always been watched over. Loved. "There's more for you," he said again. "But it begins with trust. With remembering. With letting go." I didn't know what would come next. I didn't even know what I was letting go of. But for the first time in decades, I wanted to find out. I nodded slowly. "I'm ready," I said, though my voice shook. He smiled softly, kindly. And just like that, the room began to change again. The room around me began to shift, though my body never moved. The air changed, first becoming lighter, warmer, almost like I had stepped outside into the early morning sun. The walls of my bedroom slowly faded, and in their place, I saw something breathtaking. I was standing in a vast open field filled with tall golden grass, gently waving in a breeze I couldn't feel. The sky above me glowed with a soft light, not from a sun, but from something higher, something purer. There were no shadows. Everything was touched by this peaceful brightness. I turned slowly, unsure if I was dreaming, if my mind was slipping away. But the angel stood beside me, as real as ever, his robes moving without wind, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "This is a place between," he said. "A space where the soul can remember before it returns." "Returns to what?" I asked again. "To truth," he replied, as if that one word held more meaning than I could grasp. We walked in silence. With each step I took, I felt lighter, as if pieces of fear and regret were falling off me like old clothing. My back straightened. My breathing deepened. I didn't feel old anymore. I didn't feel tired. We came to a hill that overlooked a wide, quiet valley. In that valley, I saw flickers of light, tiny glowing forms moving gently across the land. I realized they weren't fireflies or stars. They were people. Or rather souls. Each glowing softly, like living prayers. "Are they?" I hesitated. "Like me, they are on their journey," the angel said. "Some are remembering. Some are resting. Some are choosing," I asked. "Yes," he said. "What comes next is always chosen. Even when we don't realize it." I felt my heart tighten. "I didn't think we got to choose what happens after death." The angel turned to face me fully, his expression kind but clear. Not all choices are made with words. Some are made with longing, with love, with the deepest parts of who you are. I stared back out over the valley, watching the lights move slowly, peacefully. And what about me? I asked. What am I choosing now? He looked at me in silence for a moment before answering. You are choosing to remember. And that is the first step toward everything. I didn't understand it all, not yet. But his words sank deep into my bones. Something in me felt like it was waking up after a long, dreamless sleep. I turned to look at him again. Is this heaven? I asked. The angel smiled, not with amusement, but with tenderness. No, he said. But you are close, and with that, I felt the wind change again. The light around us grew softer, warmer. And somewhere in the distance, I heard a sound, not music, not words, but something like home. The sound grew louder, yet it remained impossible to describe. It wasn't a voice, yet I felt like something was being spoken directly into my soul. It wasn't music, but there was rhythm, beauty, and a deep sense of peace within it. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt tears rise, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense that I was known, loved, and safe. When I opened my eyes, the angel was no longer beside me. He stood a few steps ahead, waiting. I followed him silently. As we walked, the golden field began to shift again. The sky took on deeper shades of rose and lavender. We were approaching what looked like an ancient gate, made of stone and light. It stood tall, open, and shimmering. I didn't know if I was supposed to pass through, but I felt drawn to it. My feet moved on their own. Before I could ask a question, the angel turned to me and said, "There is something you need to see before you decide." He raised his hand, and the gate began to show moving images like water holding reflections. But these weren't just memories. They were moments from my life that I had forgotten or maybe had chosen to ignore. I saw myself as a teenager, alone in my room, praying in the dark after my grandmother died. I saw myself as a young adult, sitting quietly on the church steps after everyone had left, unsure if God even heard me anymore. And then I saw moments I never realized had meaning. The time I stopped to help a crying child find his mother. The elderly woman I smiled at every morning on the bus. The meal I cooked for a neighbor who had lost her husband. I watched it all breathless. I had never thought much of those small acts. They were just things I did because it felt right. But now I saw them shining with light. Each one left a trace. Each one mattered. None of it was wasted, the angel said softly. Not one tear, not one act of kindness, not one moment of faith in the silence. My knees gave out and I sat on the grass, overwhelmed. I thought my life was ordinary, I whispered. The angel knelt beside me. There is no such thing as ordinary in the hands of God. My heart broke open at those words. All my doubts, all my regrets, all the times I felt invisible, they all melted in that moment of truth. You were never unseen, he added. Every step you took, heaven walked with you. I looked back at the gate, then at the angel. So what now? I asked. He looked at me with a gentle strength. Now you choose. Whether to return and carry this light to others, or to rest and let the next part begin. I didn't know how I would decide. But I knew I wasn't afraid anymore. I was finally awake. I sat in silence, staring at the open gate and the light beyond it. There was no pressure, no rush. The angel waited patiently, his presence calm and steady. I could feel the weight of the choice before me, not in fear, but in sacred stillness. I wasn't being forced. I was being invited. If I go through, I asked quietly, what will happen to my life back there? The angel's voice was gentle. Time will continue. Your body will rest. Loved ones will grieve, then heal. The light you carried will remain with them, in ways you may never fully see. I swallowed hard. And if I return, then you will carry this encounter inside you, he replied. Your life will not be the same. You will see with different eyes. Walk with deeper purpose. And you will bring light to others who have forgotten their own. I looked down at my hands, old, wrinkled, familiar. So much of my life had felt ordinary. I had often wondered if I mattered, if anything I did made a difference. And now, in this quiet place between, I saw how even my smallest choices had echoed beyond me. I felt a deep ache, not sadness exactly, but a longing. A longing to love better. To forgive more. To speak truth. To comfort others the way I had been comforted now. Do many people choose to go back? I asked. Some, the angel said. Those whose time is not finished. Those who carry a message. Those who are called to remind others that heaven is not far. His words struck something inside me. I thought of my grandchildren. Of the people I had met over the years, some still hurting, still searching. I thought of how afraid I had been, and how that fear had shaped my life. And I realized something. I didn't want others to live in that kind of fear anymore. I wanted them to know they were seen, loved, protected, even in the silence. If I return, I asked, will I remember this? The angel gave a soft nod. Not every detail, but the feeling, the truth, the light. It will stay with you. It will guide you. A breeze moved through the golden field, and I felt a peace I had never known before. I stood slowly. My legs were steady, my breath deep. I looked once more toward the gate. It was beautiful, yes. But so was the thought of bringing this beauty back to those still walking in the dark. I turned to the angel. I want to go back, I said. Not because I'm afraid to go on, but because I finally know why I'm here. He smiled, not with approval, but with joy. Then go in peace, he said. And let your life become a whisper from heaven. The light began to dim, and the field faded gently. I felt my body again. The weight of the sheets, the air of my bedroom. But everything had changed. I had changed. I woke with a gasp. The room was exactly as I had left it, quiet, dim, the soft hum of the night filling the space. But something was different. It wasn't just the return of my breath or the beat of my heart. It was the deep awareness that I had come back with something sacred. I sat up slowly, placing my feet on the floor, and let my hands rest in my lap. My old body still ached. My knees still complained. But I felt stronger than I had in years, strong in my spirit, as if something eternal had been poured into me. I looked around, half expecting to see the angel standing there again. But he was gone. The silence now wasn't empty, it was holy. It was filled with meaning. That morning, I moved through my day differently. I spoke less, but I listened more. I noticed the tone in people's voices, the weight in their eyes. I found myself praying not out of desperation, but out of love. Quiet prayers, whispered under my breath while stirring my coffee or folding a towel. Prayers of thanks, of blessing, of protection for strangers I passed. Days turned into weeks. Life seemed the same on the outside, but I knew it wasn't. My daughter asked me one evening if I was feeling okay. I smiled and simply said, I feel awake. One Sunday, I went back to the little church I had stopped attending years ago. I sat in the back pew, unnoticed, and cried softly through the entire service. Not because I was sad, but because I finally understood. Every hymn, every prayer, every candle lit, it was all a language my soul now spoke fluently. And I felt home. I began sharing small pieces of my experience with close friends. I didn't talk about the angel directly at first. I spoke about light, about peace, about hearing something beautiful in the silence. Some people listened with curiosity, others with tears in their eyes. A few didn't know what to say. That was okay. I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I was just planting seeds. One day, my youngest granddaughter came to visit. She asked why I seemed different, and I told her, sometimes God lets us see beyond the veil. Not to scare us, but to remind us that we're never alone. She blinked slowly and nodded like she understood something deeper than words could explain. That night, after she left, I sat in my chair and looked out the window. The stars seemed brighter. The world seemed softer. I remembered the angel's words, let your life become a whisper from heaven, and so I tried. Not by shouting, not by preaching, but by living gently, by forgiving faster, by loving more openly, by choosing peace over pride. And every now and then, when the room grows still and the night is quiet, I swear I feel him again. Standing just beyond the veil, watching, waiting, and smiling. Some nights, when the world is especially quiet, I still think about that moment when the room fell silent and the angel appeared at my door. It feels like a dream now, but one more real than any waking moment. Life didn't get easier after that experience. Bills still came. Pain still visited. People still misunderstood me. But something inside me had shifted. I had seen the edge of eternity. I had heard a voice without sound. I had stood in the presence of a messenger from heaven. And because of that, I was no longer afraid. I started reading the Bible again, not out of duty, but out of hunger. Words I had read 100 times before now burned with life. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I have called you by name, you are mine. That one always stayed with me. Because I had heard my name whispered. Not shouted. Not scolded. Whispered. With love. With knowing. With a kind of tenderness that only heaven could offer. I realized the angel hadn't come to impress me or dazzle me. He came to remind me of who I was. Whose I was. That even in the silence, God had been writing a story in my life, a story of grace, of quiet faithfulness, of redemption. And that story was not over. I began to see the people around me with new eyes. That tired nurse at the clinic. A daughter of God, probably carrying pain I'll never know. That grumpy man at the grocery store. Maybe fighting battles I can't see. I didn't always know what to say. But I could offer a kind word, a smile, a prayer. A whisper of heaven. I shared my full story only once in our small church prayer group. I spoke softly, unsure of how it would be received. But when I finished, the room was silent. Not with doubt, but with awe. A few people cried. One woman said, "I've been praying for a sign." Maybe your story was it. That's when I realized, sometimes God sends angels to wake us up. And sometimes He sends us to wake up others. I don't know how many years I have left on this earth. None of us do. But I'm no longer counting days. I'm counting moments. Moments of grace. Of purpose. Of connection. And when my final breath does come, whenever that may be, I won't be afraid. Because I've already seen the light. I've already heard my name. And I know who's waiting for me on the other side. Until then, I will walk by faith. I will trust in the one who called me back for a reason. And I will let my life whisper to anyone willing to listen. He is real, He is near, and He loves you more than you can imagine.